If you're thinking about building your own tech stack in-house rather than renting it, Chris Wise from Wise Capital explains the pros and cons of both and what he's done to protect his business from future tech corrections. Stay tuned. Part of your background is in the Naval Special Warfare space. So is that a, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you kind of thing, or are we okay to ask about that?
That's a good question. No, feel free. I built a platform that handled this property management space, frankly, in my opinion, better than what we see today. I think there's a lot of value in understanding that you don't need to be the best at everything.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to The Business Game,
a podcast that moves the needle.
Hello and welcome to The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle. I'm Steve Plummer. Now, before we get started today, make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Today, we're joined by Christopher Wise, President of Wise Capital. Hi, Chris. How are you going? And welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All righty. So, Chris, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Wise Capital and what it does.
Absolutely. So, Chris Wise, owner of Wise Capital. We're a property tech company. We develop our own software, AI programs, tangible products like locks, lights, cameras, and the such. And we focus on the Class C multifamily space. And so we're trying to put in this property tech into the Class C space, typically apartments, 20 to 60 units throughout the Midwest.
All right, fantastic. Now, I did notice, Chris, that part of your background is in the Naval Special Warfare space. So is that a, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you kind of thing, or are we okay to ask about that?
No, feel free. I love that time of my life, and I'm always happy to talk about it. And like I said earlier, if it gets me to Australia, I'll take that even more.
All right, now I am nervous because you're wanting to come to Australia and stalk or whatever. So, all right, fantastic. Well, let's start there, Chris, because you have had a very diverse career. From that Naval Special Warfare space, you were an attorney, and now you're in the proptech founder space. So I'm really interested. What was the moment you realized that affordable housing, because that's where the space you play in, and not luxury Class A development, was a mission worth building?
Yeah, I think it goes back just to kind of my career trajectory, right? So, I've always focused on this social impact. Where can I go into and make the largest impact, make a change for the better, and push on that to make sure that the people that are typically forgotten about, or even, the properties or the situations that are so difficult to handle, are addressed by someone who's genuinely trying to handle those concerns. And so, that started with the law firm, obviously. And then as that scaled and got into the property tech space, it really drove me into the Class C arena where, you see this massive need for somebody to step in, input technology that can work in that space. And that's typically the battle that we have is, whether property tech can really work in that type of space.
So for anyone listening who doesn't understand or has never heard of the Class C classification, can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So typically when you hear Class C, the resounding kind of stigma is like, rundown buildings, deferred maintenance, maybe there's some troubled tenants. And none of that is actually true. The Class C space is primarily defined by the year the building was built. And so while there's numerous factors and all of that, primarily, especially in the US, the arbitrary date is 1978. So pretty much anything older than 78, they're almost always going to have a Class C stamp on them. And there's ways to get out of that, but predominantly that's the stepping stone to start.
And do you have trouble, I guess, or is it a challenge rather, to sell that to investors? Because, I want blue chip stuff. I don't want Class C stuff. So is that a challenge? And if so, how do you overcome that?
No, I don't think it's a challenge. I think that when you kind of approach this space, the numbers support it, right? So, you have a 97% pay on time rate. Typically, you're sitting around 90 to 95% occupied. The rents, while below market typically, are still well into the cash flow arena, and because they're below market, inputting the technology, and frankly managing the expenses. That's where we focus primarily. Is not, hey, let's go in, raise rents, and by doing that we'll drive NOI or net operating income. Instead, we look at, what are the expenses, and predominantly they just have old materials, and so just updating these things can help significantly on the expense side.
Uh-huh. One of the parts of what you do is a focus on multifamily housing. Why is that important?
I think it just goes back to the social impact, having the largest impact by tackling a space that is typically left alone. And so when we go into the multifamily arena, especially, we like to sit around the 20 to 60 unit range. It's kind of that sweet window where, it's too small for larger institutions and typically too big for kind of the mom and pop shops, right? And so it's a way to have that impact on a larger number of individuals, but then also, really implement this technology that works best when we can start adding those unit counts.
Yeah. We'll get to the technology in a minute, which is fascinating what you guys are doing. But I'm just a little bit curious as well. What do investors overlook, or do they not understand about the sector and what you're doing, and why? It's probably almost a once in a generation opportunity.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, you have a little bit of the Class C learning curve, right? And the data around that, I think that's kind of lost in the mix of things. I think, it's kind of a difficult question to answer. I think that, just the technology and implementing it and explaining the real avenue. I mean, when you think about property tech, Ring and security cameras and locks, I mean, they typically play in the property tech arena. Same with property management software. And I think the difference in the opportunity is when you take that holistic approach and you are looking at, the apartment as kind of a living organism, right? So being able to track and use this technology to get data on water and power and, the IoT working with the locks and the lights and all these things, you can really see that life cycle of the entire building and all of the appliances and amenities that run with that, which is something that's not really touched in the property tech space right now. Typically, everybody picks a lane, like I said, locks or security or property management software. They're not looking at that apartment as really kind of a living organism.
Yeah, you're certainly playing in a different space that's not, as you said, I won't use the word mainstream, but it's not as popular at the moment. I'm fascinated with your background in that, your time in the Navy and your time as an attorney and so forth. And what parts of that story, of your story, have been really useful in doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think we need people who aren't afraid to tackle what people want to stay away from, and that could be ranging from, just looking at the law firm. I mean, that law firm is a divorce, custody, domestic violence law firm. Obviously, that's a difficult area to be in law. And then transitioning over to the property tech space when we're looking at these communities that are often ignored. And so, I think that background, especially in the Navy, I mean, that is, I've always gone towards where the problems are and addressing those problems and doing that the best that I can. And taking that social impact to heart and making a positive change and doing it in the areas that, people are kind of scared to go into.
Mm. All righty. Here's a little bit of a left of field question in some ways, but you've said that the future of affordable housing, it's not a construction problem. It's a systems and intelligence problem. What's the biggest misconception leaders, investors, and so forth have about where innovation actually needs to happen?
I think the biggest misconception is, it's always nice to sit back and look and build something new, right? So you look at the luxury Class A space and you have this this excitement because it's new and we can input the technology and, look at, what it's going to do for the community. And we actually forget that we have a community now and that community needs our help now. And they already have the infrastructure. They just need to bring it into, modern times and to implement these systems and processes that we would almost just assume that it's already there because, that's how we run our businesses. And that's how, we're accustomed when we go to the grocery store or what have you. And we forget that there's this space that has kind of just been left behind and not brought up.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I think there's a pain point that all businesses have that quietly eats away at their time. Do you know what it is?
No.
Scheduling.
Oh, absolutely. Staff rosters, equipment, logistics, compliance. It never ends.
No, totally. That's what I love about what TraffTrack is doing. They make complex scheduling simple with smart, intuitive software, all handled remotely, right? In real time on both the desktop and the app, right? The app as well. So everyone stays in sync.
And their team gets it. They've worked in industries like construction, logistics, and events. So they know the pain firsthand.
Yep. Now, it's just smooth, smart, and stress-free. Who doesn't want that? So check them out at trafftrack.com. And thank you, TraffTrack, for supporting the business game. Let's talk about the tech that you're using, because there's some innovative stuff going on with that. So explain how you're using AI and what benefits that's bringing. And just dive into that a little bit for us. I find that an interesting take.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have quite a bit. So I'll kind of just cherry pick. As far as AI, we like to use AI for predictive modeling and predictive maintenance. Everything we do is off market. And so there's models that are created that we go and make sure that we find those value add properties that make sense for us and that we can have that impact that we want to have. That, sources data that typically first off, you don't find anywhere. It's not a third party that you could purchase that kind of material from. And so it's collecting this, analyzing it the way that we want it to, and giving us the projections that we want to see in order to make a decision. From a maintenance predictive model standpoint, it's looking at everything that has a model number and determining the life cycle without having to drive the cost on having, for an example, sensors tied to every little product where that can be very costly. Some of these sensors are $500 to $1,200 a sensor. You may have, 200 or so sensors in there. That just becomes extremely difficult to make ends meet, especially in a Class C space. So it's definitely driving the cost down while also giving us that same return on information. And then, of course, you can talk about, conversational AI. We can talk about, the IoT sensors and how we are building everything in-house, but also, I joke about it. We don't use the cloud, for instance. It's real products. And I think that this goes back to that old theory where, we have all these smartphones and now all of a sudden we're turning around and getting these products that are on the cloud and utilizing all this stuff. And we forget that little computer there, is valuable in hard form, right? Like actually physical product in the building that's hardwired in that you're not worried if, the internet drops or, something to that effect. There's that real product and hard value there, which has a million benefits on the side I can go down rabbit holes with.
Conversational AI. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so conversational AI, back when I first utilized it a couple years ago, when I was developing this initially for the law firm, almost nobody really understood what that was. And today, I think we're so accustomed to it that we forget that that's what it is. And so great example of this is, what most people are familiar with is if you're texting back and forth with that, robot, and it's a robot, and you're texting back and forth, and those responses are coming back. Conversational AI, those aren't pre-generated responses, meaning that it's not a workflow that says if they say this, you will say that. It really is building that conversation based off the tonality and what's being talked about and whatever your space may be. And so, that's another great example of use of AI. And I think people are shocked when you actually implement it and say you don't disclose that, this is a robot that you're talking with. It's quite interesting to see, the percentage of people that don't realize that it's a robot. I mean, it's really quite frankly interesting to see just how long those conversations can go and how the tonality can be met and almost empathy, if you will, without realizing that, that's actually a computer going back and forth with you.
Have you had pushback from the market at all about that in terms of, I don't want to talk to a bot or a computer, I want to talk to a real person?
No, we disclose it up front, so there's not a hidden ball situation with us. But really, when someone reaches out to us, and maintenance is a great example of that. If someone has a maintenance issue, it's guiding them through basic trouble serving type, communication where, if the toilet's not working because the lever is messed up, is the chain attached, like those kind of things where it's not, frankly, trying to sell you a product. It's really just trying to help you out in the short term. And in the back end, we're actually getting these updates and these responses, and we're able to send out maintenance crew and they get a general understanding based on the conversation of what they're walking into. You're not waiting for 3 days for somebody to look at the toilet that's already getting addressed, So there's a lot of things happening in the background. But yeah, we don't get a lot of pushback, to be honest with you.
What about hallucinations and accuracy? Has that been an issue? And if so, how have you addressed that?
Yeah, so in the early days, for sure, right? And I think it's because, it's an interesting question, because if you do it right, you can get in front of probably 95% of it, right? And so if you let AI loose, if you will, right, and you don't micro-target it down to one objective, and I'll just use maintenance as an example. If you don't target that down to, hey, these are the maintenance issues that we're going to address, and if it's outside of that, then we need to get connected directly so that we can address that. But if it is these little things, these are the, whether it be the toilet or there's a leak in the sink or, the lights aren't turning on, here's the short-term fixes or outcomes that we're looking for that we can address through AI and say, hey, have you checked the switch is actually flipped, or, someone didn't take the light bulb or whatever. And then, test that out long before you implement it in real life, right? And I think the issues that we see are when people just let it go. They say, oh, it's already built, it's live on the website. And then you're talking with it and it's talking about the football game. And you're like, what? Yeah. How did that happen? So there's a lot of, you've got to actually test this out and get you down.
So you mentioned efficiencies in terms of someone's round really quickly to fix the toilet or whatever. What have been some of the other benefits of using that conversational AI?
Yeah, so, we use conversational AI to address specific problems. So that could be, we could theoretically say that leasing's a problem, right? So when somebody reaches out and they're interested in whether we have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit available, then, we want that AI to be able to address whether it's available, what does it look like? So you can send the pictures of the unit itself and answer those basic questions. Where's the kitchen? How many cabinets? Do you have a stove? Just go through really the basic leasing process. And then, if they're interested in moving forward, walking them through that initial sales cycle, right? Where it's, okay, well, here's the steps. So you have to get an application. This is how you do that. From there, you'll get, a call from these individuals and they're going to walk you through the approval process and then where you go from there. And so it's finding those outcomes and then deliberately setting that conversational AI bot to that outcome. And so we have multiple bots and we cater them to one outcome, whether it be maintenance or leasing. And then, there's others that we use internally, which is addressing more of a, what issues are we having, for instance, in parking? And, that could be a multitude of things, whether it be, pavement is destroyed because of the snow and, we've got to address these things. okay, well, I can sit here and call 40 vendors, or we can prep bids out so that they can come back to us and they know what the issue is because we've already addressed it, and it's able to streamline that for us.
Mm. All right, let's talk about, I guess, what you're doing, that in-house tech stuff from a business model point of view. Because my sense is that most real estate companies, they buy in technology, yet you're building yours in-house. So from a business operational kind of standpoint, why do you believe owning your own tech stack is more valuable than renting it?
Yeah, so this is something I get extremely excited about because it started, to be frank, it kind of started as a joke, right? So we go in and we're like, okay, we would like to have smart locks, and these smart locks need to, have the ability to do fobs and be able to type in the numbers and maybe there's imagery that we can also tie into it. Well, to find these locks, I mean, there were $1,200 to $1,600 that actually did what we wanted to do. And then that's when I got the team together and said, there's no way that we can't build that for less than $1,200. So that's how it started was, okay, well, let's build a lock. We know how to code. We can get the materials. Well, let's put it together and see what this would actually cost us to develop our own. And, with that, developed the IoT system for security. And there's a lot of measures with that. But as we developed it, we realized that we could build these locks for like $40. And so that's when the light bulb really clicked. And I said, well, you know what? Why don't we have smart doors? Like, forget about the lock for a second. We could create doors that have the cameras into them with the locks, biometrics. There's so many things that you can do. And, that's where all the fun is. The fun is sitting back and going, we can create this. We know how to. We can build it. We can do it in a cost efficient way, and which is why we're so heavily focused on the Class C space. Because if we can show that this is something that you can implement in this space, there's no reason why you can't implement it in luxury Class A. And you still have that type of material. It's not like you have worse materials or materials that don't stand the test of time. And then you're also able to solve your own problem. So the benefit of owning your own tech stack and building your own tech stack is, you control the outcomes, you control the variables, and there's always things that stand out that you cannot control. However, I'm not sitting here calling another company hoping that they assign someone to look at a problem that probably is easy to fix, but I just don't have the back end access to fix that problem. And so, when I looked at even the maintenance predictive models, the sensors do a great job. They do fantastic. However, if I could build the same thing with our software and AI, and it costs me time. However, we already own it. So we already own the AI chips. We already own, we already have all this product. I'm not inputting a sensor. I mean, that's saving me tens of thousands of dollars, and we're still within a 3% margin. And then again, when you have it in-house, you can make those decisions, right? You can say, okay, I can live with a 3% margin where, it says that it should be efficient and running productively and for the next 8 months. And it ended up being 6 months. Well, we knew this all along, whether it's 3% or not, that's something that I can live with, but it's about planning as well and using that data to make sure you can plan, what you need to.
Yeah. Where do you see AI going in the property space in particular?
So it's interesting. I personally feel like today everybody's an AI company. And so it just seems like it's everywhere. Everyone's throwing it in it's like a sales piece now. And so I think that the companies that will be successful are going to use it for specific outcomes. And they're going to be able to control the variables to those outcomes as much as possible. I think the concern that I have is that so many people in industry or businesses in this industry rely on third parties, and you really just don't have the control over that third party. And you kind of see this. It's kind of a bad example, but you had Amazon lose the cloud service there for 24 hours or so, and that affected so many people. There's other businesses that have had the same issue. I think Cloudflare was another one that had one recently. You can't control anything out of that. That happens, and you're held to whatever your backup is. And so by utilizing your own and using it for those specific outcomes, you can control the scenario a little bit better. And I think that the companies that have that control, or at least have the systems in place to protect themselves if the first route fails, are going to be okay. But I think a lot of people right now are just throwing in AI, saying AI, not really utilizing it. And, I think there's going to be a bit of a correction on that.
Yeah. It certainly is almost a buzzword these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a gardener and I use AI kind of thing. It's I'm a doctor and I use AI, or whatever it might be. So when you say there might be a correction, what does that look like, do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that go into that, right? And I think predominantly what I'm seeing across many, many industries is that we are using that buzzword so much, and small businesses are trying to implement it as best as they can, but they don't fully understand really the capabilities, and so they're using it as a third party would sell it, and so you're kind of seeing this like resubscription fee type model where, I'm buying this service that has this conversational AI aspect to it. And, while I pay $100 for it, I resell it for $150. And that's really what I'm getting at is if you have any kind of correction at that top level that really is controlling this and implementing it, building it themselves, if that correction happens, you actually kind of have a domino effect where you're disproportionately affecting those that are kind of relying on your software, right, to solve whatever issue that is that they're trying to use for it. And I see this in the legal space, and I think quite a bit of people have seen this in the legal space where attorneys are using it for research, but they don't have that control to understand how it's mining that information. And so because of it, you're getting these make-believe cases and you're getting, things that just are not accurate. And that's really, it's tough to pick on them. I know that space really well, obviously, and I just see that often.
Hey guys, quick pause to talk about Opus Clip, one of my favorite tools for creating content without the stress. If you've ever spent hours editing videos wishing there was an easier way, Opus Clip is your solution.
Their AI engine takes your raw clips and turns them into share-ready videos in under a minute. No editing skills required, no headaches, no endless hours at your computer.
Seriously, it's like having a professional editor in your pocket. You can create more content, experiment with formats, and share it instantly, all while saving a ton of time.
And if you want to get started with a great sign-up bonus while supporting the show, just use the link in the description.
All right, back to today's episode. We're about to drop more insights you won't want to miss.
The whole, I guess, you having an in-house tech stack that's sandbagging you against that correction, isn't it? You will be least and last affected by that.
Right. And that's, I guess, built by design, if you will. When I started this, it goes back to a marketing and sales agency that I built out. And that was because I got so fed up with vendors who were reselling marketing and sales type products for a 70% markup. And the returns were horrible compared to what you could do on your own if you really understood it. And then as I started building out and coding and understanding really the power of this, especially early on in the AI space, I was able to jump ahead of it. I knew where this was going because I was using it before anyone was really talking about it. And then, while it was at a much smaller scale, you grow with that. And so I was fortunate enough to play around with it early on, and then from there start to develop real products that would have a real impact.
Chris, can we talk about, I guess, your leadership and decision making, because you seem very structured in your decision-making processes. So I'm just curious with your background in both the law and the military. And so if someone came to you and said, oh, look, Chris, coach me on how to make decisions better. Like, have you got a methodology? Is there a framework you follow? Or even what would you say to me if I said, Chris, coach me on decision-making?
Yeah, that's funny you say that. I've worked with a lot of people, coaching myself, and then also I spend a lot of time trying to fix my own problems. I learned the everything the hard way is what I tell people, and so I can speak from experience. But no, I think it's a complicated question because you deal with what aspect of decision making, right? If it's leadership in a team, there's different manager styles that you have to be able to access for different character styles of your employees. And so, there's a route, that I can go down with that. And there's also decision making with data where, it doesn't need to be fast. It needs to be well thought out. There needs to be enough people in the room that know what they're talking about. And you need to be willing to listen and not have every answer. And then, when you make the decision, give it enough room to work one way or the other. And so you got to be able to stand by your decision. At the end of the day, whatever decision I make, that is my decision. I don't get to point the finger at anybody and say, well, they led me down this path, or, at the end of the day, that was my decision. So because it was my decision, these are the reasons why I thought that would work. And now I need to sit back and see, are we going in the right direction? And if we're not, how far off are we? Is it worth seeing that correction to get us back to where we want to be? Or is it worth making that pivot to where we need to go? And so I'm a big data guy. Quite frankly, I think everybody makes fun of me for it. I will spend quite a bit of time on the numbers. I care about every number. And we've had products that I thought were amazing, and that was, going to just change the outlook of things, that the end user just didn't make sense to them, I joke about it because it's almost like that TV show in Silicon Valley, is a TV show where, they build a product and that product, gets the best ratings across the board with all the engineers, but then they get it to the end user who is a normal individual and they can't make it work. It's like, that is what I'm talking about. You got to love the data and make those decisions, but you got to get it in front of people who are actually going to use it and see where that goes.
But the data said, right? The data said, like,
yeah.
How can the data be wrong?
Believe me, there's 100 people sitting back going, "Oh my God, yeah." He'll talk about the numbers till everybody falls asleep.
Yeah. Can you share a humbling story where it did go badly wrong and what you learned from that?
Yeah. I mean, well, I have a lot of stories. Yeah, I'll do the property management, and then I'll do the biometric one. So, on property management, because I had the background in coding and I knew that space very well, and I knew how to tie this in. I built a platform that handled this property management space, frankly, in my opinion, better than what we see today. And that from, tenants paying rent to, qualifying for insurance, all the way to maintenance requests and all these things. That took a lot of time. I mean, a lot of time, a lot of effort. There's a lot of things that go into that. And at the end of the day, that, while fantastic, and you absolutely need, in my opinion, to have that available for tenants so that they're not having to pay by check or cash or whatever every month. There's about 1 million of those products out there, and so and they're not very expensive. And so while great, and I think that it did a lot of marketing and a bunch of other things. It's fantastic, but at the end of the day, time's better served in a space that drives change, and that change wasn't doing anything to the tenants. And so, it's convenient. Yes, there's also 1 million other products that will do that. But at the end of the day, I want people to come home and be proud of where they are and happy to be home and be able to relax and not have to worry about the things that we may take for granted. And so, while fantastic, that doesn't drive that impact, that feeling. Another great example is developing a biometric, essentially lock on a door. I have this concept where the door almost looks like a Tesla door, right? Where everything is flush. So like the handle is flush. You can actually walk up, put your hand to it, and then it's able to read certain metrics. This kind of goes a little sci-fi on you, but you can read metrics in your palm. It can also,
Yeah. I'm thinking Star Wars, the Jetsons, all that sort of thing, right? You touch something, it all opens. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the handle pops out, and you're able to open the door, and there's a time frame, and then it's a magnetic lock, and it'll shut and lock back up. So that's fantastic. However, do you know how many people are terrified of putting their hand on a door and having it unlock, and how much that spooks people? A lot. So fantastic concept. However, it might be a little early on the times for that one.
Yeah. So the data was good, but the people weren't, right? That was that.
Yeah. Again, it looks amazing, and it is the coolest thing, I think. And the transition is okay. Well, you can just push the numbers then, and it's same concept with the door handle, because I just think that's really clean. But you can push the buttons and hear the beeps if that makes you feel better, and it does. Oddly enough, it does.
All right, let's go from bad cop to good cop then. What's something that you've done that's worked spectacularly, or you're really proud of?
Yes, I'm extremely proud of the predictive maintenance model. I think that sometimes these products can be tough to tie in an ROI, right? And that's because there's just so many moving parts, and then really trying to button down a specific return on it can be difficult. However, with the predictive maintenance and how it models the efficiency and life cycle of certain products, it has done wonders, frankly. I mean, we had looked at it as an example. We looked at an apartment, and one of the metrics that came back to us with quite a bit of red flags was the foundation. Well, there's not typically a metric for foundation. You have to get an inspector, and then they have to raise some flags, and then then people are interested in what's going on with the foundation. This was done entirely by software, and it came back with the flags. We were concerned about it. We'd never seen that really come across in an issue. And we actually had an inspector go out, and sure enough, it was a massive problem. And that problem, fortunately, we were not involved in that deal because we do this on the front end. However, that's a problem that could have been a $50,000 problem, or it could have been $1 million problem. And, being able to catch that early on in these due diligence periods, really just blew me away on just what we're starting to scratch the surface on with that predictive modeling. And then we've also had quite a bit of wins on the off-market space, being able to evaluate these apartments with public information and being able to piece it together enough to know if that apartment is in our wheelhouse for value add and the unit counts and what we're looking to do from an expense standpoint and reducing those. And it saved us quite a bit of time, frankly. And so when you look at that, and it's easier to draw those direct lines to return on investment when you're able to see a true cost savings. And, that's the hardest part with the software, right? Is it's easy to say, well, maybe it saved us this or that. But when you actually get to actually see the numbers, it's hundreds of hours and multiple people working on it that it's saving. And then, on the back end, you're talking about investing millions of dollars into an apartment, and then finding out that there's a foundation problem that now it's difficult to make that work. And so those are two good examples, I think, of some really good wins we've had.
Yeah, you've got apartment blocks in multiple states, so we're talking. There's many moving parts to your business. So I'm really curious about leadership and your take on leadership. What would you say as a piece of advice or some tips for leaders and being good leaders in a business sense?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in understanding that you don't need to be the best at everything. I feel, especially as small business owners, it's easy to wear all the hats and talk about, all the hats that you have. And I think it's incredibly important. And Dan Martell says it best with buying back your time. Sit back and find the things that you might be okay at doing, but you may not love to do it. And finding individuals who do love to do that. And, once you get those individuals in that space, then let them do what you got them in there to do, and rely on them to give you the feedback, because that is their space. And so, we have a handful of employees, and those employees are in their space, and I have to take that information and download it and understand personally, what I need to get the decision made. But you have to lean on those people, which the hardest thing for, I think, most business owners is, once you convince yourself to let somebody else take that hat from you, you then have to convince yourself to be quiet and let that person do the thing that you got them there for.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal for me. I obviously I like to, replace certain avenues with people who love to be in that space. And then the next thing is, step back, let them run that space. And there's going to be mistakes, and it wouldn't be any different if I had all the hats. It's not like I'm foolproof and don't make mistakes. And so you got to let individuals, take care of their 5 feet of space, and then from there, relay and learn, and everyone move in the same direction.
Yeah. All right, let's lean on your wisdom a little bit and get the crystal ball out. If we fast forward 10 years, what do you think the smartest real estate operators in America will be doing that most are completely ignoring today?
I think the focus needs to be more on automation. For whatever reason, these archaic industries just love to be the last people to implement automation. And so, fast forward 10 years, I think that those that are really going to have an impact are going to be heavily geared towards that automation. It doesn't always have to be AI, but there's things that you can automate across the board, whether it be whatever industry you're in, the space, real estate. There's just so many, so much low hanging fruit to tackle with automation that has a significant impact for not only the tenants, but the, landowner, and also the investors that are involved in it. I mean, there's just so much. And so, I think if we look 10 years ahead, I think those that are going to be, well off and making good strides are going to be those that implemented more automation and then focused on those systems and processes and started to move things into what we would expect. It doesn't always have to be this innovative new Facebook-like idea. It just needs to be, implementing what we all thought everyone already did. And we just learned that they don't.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk sales and more now. I've got a choice of some Class A real estate and some Class C real estate with you, Chris. Why should I pick the Class C stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, I tell people I'm not your financial advisor. As far as, what's the best investment, I mean, there's so many variables that go into that. And so really what you have to ask yourself is, first off, why are you getting into this space in the first place? Are you, what's the purpose, right? If it's income, look at income funds. There's a million of them. Especially in the real estate space, they're structured differently. There's just so many structures and so many different things. And if it's a growth-oriented fund, I mean, that's how we're oriented, then it's understanding that there's a payout on the back end. And you have to be willing to want to do that depending on your investment strategies. And so it's really tough. If somebody came to me and said, I've got a Class A investment, or I could go with you guys in Class C, that's where I'm starting with is, okay, well, first off, what's the idea here? Are you trying to get a return every month, or are you trying to, put this in, put a chunk of change in an account, and then you want that to grow over 10 or 15 years? We are focused on a social impact. And so with that means, we're not going in and saying, hey, rents were $925 a month. Now they're $1,700. A lot of people are going to leave. And so there's no benefit to that. And you're not helping the community out by approaching, projects like that. And so, you have to be aligned morally, frankly, with that mindset. And so that's what we do. That's our focus. We don't, while the doors and the tech and everything is really cool, in some spaces, it doesn't make sense, right? And I'll give you an example because that's an interesting thing to say. But we developed these awesome locks. We're going to put them in as, I guess, is a story of a failure, but this is it doesn't align with it. So, we have these
you
great
brought this one up. I
developers.
didn't. Okay, you brought this one up, not me,
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. I don't shy away from it. Fantastic. And as we implemented it, we were about to close on a project, and one thing we didn't do with it is put it outside. We always imagined that the locks would be, interior. Well, all of that, in this particular building, all of the access doors were outside. And so when you don't develop a product like that, that's a big failure. But guess what? I mean, that tech doesn't get used there. And lesson learned, good to know. But also that doesn't mean that the project fails. That means that you go, okay, we still want to implement this smart tech. We don't have that right now, but there are products available that we can, utilize that are still driving our mission forward. And then you go about it that way. But, you have to have the mindset of the, wanting to make that social impact and not just brag about what tech or product or whatever you can make. It's got to make sense.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, Chris, thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. As we wrap up, at the Business Game, we like to get to know the person behind the screen a little bit deeper. So we play what we call the rapid fire round. So I'm going to fire 10 really quick questions to you and get you to respond in one, two, or three words, or even just a short sentence. So they'll come at you quick. And we want a quick, this is where your military training is going to come in, right? Bang, bang, bang. All right, you ready to go? We've got 10 questions.
All right, let's see it.
All righty, here we go. What was your first job?
Worked at CVS.
Okay, what's your coffee order?
Oh, black coffee. That's it, just black.
Are you an Android guy or an iPhone guy?
Oh, I'm in the middle of a internal crisis. I'm an iPhone guy right now. But
didn't mean to pick that scab off with your identity crisis.
Yeah.
Office or work from home?
Office.
Mm-hmm. Early riser or night owl?
Oh, early. I'm up at 4:30. Yeah.
Okay. One piece of tech you couldn't live without?
That's a good question. Calendar. Like any kind of calendar app.
Yeah. Your current go-to productivity hack?
My EA is going to be shaking her head at me. Productivity hack. I don't have a great answer for you on that one. Rely on the people around me to guide my life.
She's happy now, right? Your EA's happy now.
Yeah.
Yeah. A business book or podcast you'd recommend to everyone?
Yes. Buy Back Your Time, Dan Martell, Ed Milet, anything Ed Milet, anything Andy Frisella. Those are great places to start.
Okay. Best investment you've ever made, money or time?
Time. Is that the question? Time is family. That's the best investment anyone can make. Spend time with your family. That's all. All this is for that.
Yeah, beautiful. If you weren't doing what you do now, what career would you choose?
Gosh, probably astronaut. Something way out there that's not easy. That drives.
Strangely, that's not a surprise that you said that, right? With all your tech and everything. All righty.
Yeah.
Because this is called the Business Game, we do ask a big question. So if business truly is a game, what's your definition of winning?
Winning is, I believe, defined by the impact metric that you set for yourself. There's no financial metric to it. I think that ball gets moved as you progress. I don't think it has to do with the number of buildings or offices or people. I think it has to be defined by the individual and what impact they want to make. And that means that success could be a, one office, one attorney law firm, or success could be, a $2 billion real estate holding. It just is defined, I think, by what social metric do you want to meet internally. You got to block out all the noise and all the, the exciting stuff that the social media scrolls.
Yeah, fantastic. Chris, love that. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been incredibly interesting diving into your career and the world you're now creating and the impact you're having on society. So fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. Chris, where can listeners find you and more about your company online?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Everyone can find me on LinkedIn under Christopher Wise Capital. That's where I spend most of my space, where people can find me.
All right, fantastic. Chris, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. All right, folks, that's all we've got time for today. Wherever you're listening from, thanks for joining us here on The Business Game. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to The Business Game.
If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay connected.
A big thank you to our major sponsor, TraffTrack, for powering today's episode.
And join us again on the next episode of The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle.